Oh, hi! So you'd like to know more about new masculinity. Well, the truth is it's a pretty new concept, and I'd like to help define it for the both of us. But first, we have to know what new masculinity isn't. So binary opposition. It's a pair of two opposites. These opposites are the foundation to a lot of linguistic and philosophical theories. As anthropologist Jack Goody puts it, one of the two opposites is usually dominant over the other, and this difference is culture-laden and ethnocentric, with an illusory order and superficial meaning. This can be seen if you look at rich and poor. Now, one usually associates wealth with power, taste, high culture, and importance, as opposed to where poverty is basically the absence of these. But if you look at our Western society, where money is pretty much everything, poorer nations often lead happier lives, and so the superficial meaning of the dominant definition becomes more apparent. Now, if we look at the dichotomy between the male identity and the female identity, you could say that feminism actually has the dominant meaning. Women are usually portrayed as being emotionally driven, caring, sociable, relationship-oriented, and nurturing. But if you look at men, we're basically the absence of all of these traits. I mean, we don't have emotions, so we're driven by logic. We're all supposed to be lone wolves who are just out to get laid. We're incapable of affection or commitment, and if we ever tried to take care of something, it would die. Now, this may seem a little bit harsh, but if you look at any romantic comedy or sitcom, it pretty much holds true. So if men define themselves in opposition to women, what happens when the female identity changes? Tucker Max, a best-selling author and poster child for new masculinity, has created a timeline and critique of feminism. Basically, it's happened in three waves. The first wave, universal suffrage, was critical in human advancement. The second wave, sexual equality, was also very important. It fought social bonds and allowed women to choose careers in basically any field. But it may have gone just a little bit too far. Some women felt pressured into following these new rules whether they wanted to or not. The third wave of feminism wanted to do away with all of these rules and just have personal freedom. However, Tucker Max says a lot of these women chose to be sluts. Now, he also says that the second wave feminists were Jane Pauley and Gloria Steinem, and the third wave feminists are Britney Spears and Margaret Cho. Not really the best role models. But anyways, now that the female identity is concerned with not having a specific identity, how do men adapt? There are three major new roles which have arisen that men can choose to adopt in reaction to the third wave of feminism. There's metrosexuality, a trend that's come up in the past decade that involves adopting a lot of female traits while keeping a penis. There's nothing wrong with this, but I think that Sting looks pretty creepy now. The remaining two roles are that of new masculinity and a resurgence of misogyny. It's really a shame that these two get confused, because they really couldn't be more at odds. As I've already said, Tucker Max is a great example of the new man, but he could easily be mistaken for a misogynist at first glance. You see, Tucker spends most of his life getting drunk and having sexual escapades that would make Paris Hilton blush. And this alone is a very unproductive life, but Tucker has many saving graces. You see, he went to law school, he's a great writer, and he's one of the most honest people on the face of this planet. In fact, if you go to his website or read his books, the first thing he says is that he's a huge asshole. He does read these really stupid things, but he records them for entertainment and educational purposes. Tucker may seem like a womanizer, but most of his stories involve women that impress him, or even outmatch his debauchery. The stories show that women don't need to follow the old rules. They can seem just as cool as he is in most of the stories. But it makes another valid point. women can now be held to the same standard as him. He may seem like a pig, but he's having consensual relations with women who choose to be just as loose as him for the most part. One thing that the champions of new masculinity, such as Tucker Max, George Uzunian, or Maddox, and Daniel O'Brien from Cracked have in common is that they're all intelligent, well-spoken people, whereas most examples of new misogyny are cowardly and anonymous. If you need to see an example of these acts, just visit 4chan.org or the comment section of any feminist's YouTube page. These men, who are often boys, make tough statements under a false name from the safety of their basements. But you have to know that most of them are reacting out of fear or confusion at the current state of the male identity. In fact, a recent study by Odom and Warner found that most rapists were severely oppressed by their mothers during childhood, so they grew up to view all women as cold, deceptive, and heartless. I am by no means defending these rapists or misogynists, but it should be known that they are mostly reacting through damaged perceptions and really can't help themselves. So now that we know a little bit more about the history of new masculinity as well as the movements surrounding it, we can probably define it. First and foremost, it is the complete acceptance of the equality of feminism, no matter what form it takes. And once we realize that these traditionally female traits aren't inherently inferior or detrimental to the male identity, you can actually appropriate from both camps in order to make a more complete being. I mean, look at me. I love sports, cigars, hard liquor, and red meat. But I'll cook up that steak, I'll do the dishes, and then I'll sew a button back onto this jacket. So cheers. I hope you've learned as much as I have.